Tom Sox Nation, welcome to the 2023 season wrap-up episode. I am joined by a panel of guests. To name them all, Nathan Schwartz, Jake Tisdale, Alex Rocco, Gianna Cataya, Gianni Maltese, and last but not least, David Argo. Everybody, thank you so much for taking the time with me this morning. Really excited to dive in of what we've seen so far this season. We'll get right into the awards here. First up, we have the big hitter, Team MVP. I have my pick. I want to hear what everybody else thinks. Nathan, we can let you go first for the team MVP.
Yeah, so it took me a little while to decide who was going to get the MVP award because for me, there's a lot of guys that could have gotten this award without it being an issue. But I'm going to go with Connor Hanks because he was one of the few guys on the team that was here since the very beginning. He missed a couple of the games at the tail end of the season. But he's really a guy that a couple weeks into the summer, you wouldn't have expected him to get this award. He was hitting in the low 200s, but he really picked it up as the season went on. He finished second among qualified players on the team in average at 308, hit 22 RBIs and an on-base percentage of 462. And most importantly to me, he drew 31 walks, which was leading on the team. And he was always a guy that you just saw get on base. He was a high-energy guy, and whenever you seemed to need a clutch hit, Connor was there to provide it. So Connor's going to get my vote for MVP.
For sure. I think that's definitely one of the picks that's up there. Jake, who's your pick for MVP?
I got to go with consistency, and I'm still a proponent of batting average, so I got to go with Bryce Martinez here. I think he was just, able to, over a vast course of the season, just maintain a very high batting average, always able to get a clutch knock when you need one, provide a runner on the base paths, which Coach Lyndon Coleman was always happy to take advantage of and kind of stretch that out with his speed, his batting average, the consistency and longevity of his stay in Charlottesville. I'm going to go with Bryce here.
Rocco, do you have anything else to add between these two guys?
Yeah, I was down between actually both of these guys, Hanks and Martinez. I'm going to side with Nathan here. I just like Nathan's big point, the consistency of Connor Hanks that he provided all throughout the season, and where Lyndon Coleman could put him in any spot in the infield. He could play first, he could play short, he could play second. He made a lot of his money over there at third base, and he was an excellent defender. And for a Tom Sox team that played great defense, he was the top infielder. And then offensively, just the approach that he had at the plate, never really getting behind the count. When he was behind in the count, he would fight back, draw those walks and the clutch hits. The Tom Sox had an excellent season. They were called the comeback Sox for a reason, and a lot of those big hits stemmed from Connor Hanks working deep in accounts and fighting off these tough pitches and ultimately getting on base. And so with that, I will have to give my MVP to Connor Hanks.
For sure. Gianna, your input?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Mr. Tom Sox himself, Garrett Spikes. It's someone who may seem like a funny answer, but he had a 288 average in 24 games played. That's 59 at bats. He was the one who gave us a lifeline in game 2 against the Turks. We were down. He had a 3-run homer. It just sounded like, and it gave us the lead at the time. He just found a way to get things done. And I just love how he always has fun, because that's more than half the game in summer baseball.
Right. Gianna, let's hear what you have to say here.
So I'm going to go in a different direction than all of you guys. I'm going to go with Kyle Edwards. He was an outstanding player for the Tom Sox. It was his second season with the Tom Sox. He was a great hitter for us, a great defender. Regular season, he definitely was a good hitter for us, was always getting the hits that we need. Postseason, he was more of that defensive player for us. So overall, I would have to give it to Kyle Edwards.
Argo, what do you have to say about the MVP?
Really surprised his name hasn't been brought up yet, but Henry Ford is my MVP. We finished the team, finished the season leading batting average, leading in slugging percentage, second in on-base percentage, pretty much tied for the lead in RBIs, despite only playing half the games. So, I mean, he had the production there, especially at the end of the year, hitting over 500 in the playoffs. Without him, I don't even know if we would have been the number 1 seed. Nevertheless, make it all the way to the championship round. So that shows value to me, and that's my most valuable player.
Yeah, I'm going to have to side with Gian on this one. It's in large part due to what Nathan mentioned in longevity and consistency. In the NBA, they always say availability is the best ability. I'm going to go with Kyle Edwards. He played 44 Tom Sox games. He was big in stolen bases, 24 of them. Tom Sox set numerous records for stolen bases this year, as everybody knows by now. He had double-digit extra base hits. He had flashy plays at shortstop with a .935 fielding percentage of the season. So I think that Kyle Edwards is just a guy you can't go wrong with. But a thing we've noticed here, talking about the MVPs and really all season, is that there's a plethora of talent on this team. The Tom Sox this year and in years past are just talented from top to bottom. And that's what's really important in getting a successful team year over year in the summer baseball landscape. Jeff Burton and the entire Tom Sox team do a great job at putting together such a well-rounded roster year in and year out. So I think that really contributes to the different names that we've seen mentioned when we're talking about the MVP here and all season along. Next, we want to move on to is hitter of the year. It can just be any hitter, somebody that stood out to you in the box. I'll say mine first, Derek Williams. I don't think that this guy necessarily was the best hitter all year, but he had such a hot streak after winning the home run derby. He notched 4 home runs, 7 walks, and 8 hit by pitches in just about a dozen games. I think that Derek Williams is really a flashy baseball player that really succeeds in this next era of MLB when home runs really are king. So Nathan, we'll start with you again. Who got your hitter of the year this year?
Yeah, I think for me, a reason why I didn't vote for this guy for MVP is just because of what he did as a hitter. So I wanted to vote for him for hitter of the year, and that's Henry Ford. A lot of what Dargo mentioned there. I'm a big proponent of on-base percentage, that Moneyball style of baseball, and Henry with the 424 on base. That's a phenomenal number to have, especially when he missed those 3 weeks at the end of June from the thumb injury. He came out of the gates guns a-blazing, had a 500 average over the first 4 games. Then he cooled off when he came back, but as Dargo mentioned, that hot streak he had that propelled the Sox into the postseason, finished with a 316 average. Those 7 home runs, the new home run king in a single season for the Tom Sox. 588 slugging as well to go on top of that. So Henry did it all at the plate, especially in those last 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, Jake, we'll go with you again because that's how we went last time. Who's your hitter of the year?
Yeah, so I'm going forward here, but I do want to shout out, as you mentioned, Derek Williams had an insanely hot stretch that I think does deserve recognition. And then also, I think what could get lost in the shuffle a little bit is Alex Boucher. Right before he had to head back to his program, he had a really, really nice hitting streak in those last couple of games racking up. So I want to give credit to those guys. But I think the answer here is Henry Ford, just given the power that he brought to the plate, especially down late in the season. When he came up, you just knew something special was going to happen each time. And so for that reason, I'm going to go Henry Ford here. Yeah.
As we were saying, there are a bunch of guys that you can mention for any of these awards, and that's just what's so special about this year's Tom Sox team and all Tom Sox teams in general. Who do you want to mention for hitter of the year?
Yeah, so you mentioned longevity, and that plays a big role into my selections. So I was going to say Jacob Ferens, but he only played 11 games. In those 11 games, he was dominant, had 12 hits and 36 at-bats. The power really stood out, had 4 doubles, 3 home runs. But I'm going to go with Aiden Teal here, a guy who played toward the latter half of July and really tore it up, especially in the playoffs. He hit 346 in the Tom Sox 8 playoff games, had 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. But that stretch that he had to end the regular season, he was mashing balls all over the park. And we talked about the approach earlier with guys like Connor Hinks and Henry Ford. At bat, Aiden Teal was the same way. He missed some time spending time with his brother who got drafted into the MLB. But after he came back from that trip back to New Jersey and back home, he really was a different player, drew a lot of walks, was much more patient, and that allowed him to see better pitches, and he wasn't missing those pitches. And down the stretch, when the Tom Sox needed a hit, it was Aiden Teal coming up with it.
Yeah. Maltese, let's hear what you have to say. And I think, speaking on Aiden Teal in a second, we're just getting started with what we're going to see from him. He told me that he was a two-way player, looking forward to get back on the mound after Tommy John surgery. So I'm thrilled as a UVA fan just to see what we can get from Aiden Teal in the years to come. But Maltese, let's hear what you have to say for hit of the year.
I have to say, with all things considered, it's kind of a tough pick, but I'm going with Bryce Martinez. He was able to have a 319 average. He had the team most 37 hits in 116 at bats. He also worked a lot of walks. He worked 19 walks. So this is someone who saw the count and he saw the ball well. He stepped up when he had to get to leadoff spot. He just found a way, not necessarily extra base hits, not the home runs, but he just found a way to get on base and get those clutch hits, especially during the regular season. And that's what you need most, especially when a guy changes to leadoff.
Right. Gianna, do you have anything else to mention in terms of hitter of the year?
I'm just gonna play off of Nathan and Jacob. Henry Ford, by far, it was mentioned he had 7 home runs on the season, and like he's such a young player. Like he's gonna be a freshman at Virginia this coming up fall, and like he's already putting up like great numbers and having great performances at bat. So like I look forward to see what Henry has in the coming up for him in the future.
Yeah. And Dargy, you want to wrap us up on the offense here?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I think it's Henry Ford. Just given everything I said during the MVP and everything that 3 others have said so far during this category.
Right. And moving on to pitcher of the year, we have 2 pieces of hardware to give out here. First is the starter. The qualification for the starter award is that 2/3 of their appearances were starts. So there are 10 guys eligible for this. But to me, I think that this pick is a no-brainer. To me, I think it's Mark Perkins. 4th best ERA in Tom Sox history, the VBL South pitcher of the year. Is there any dispute to this award? Nathan, you go first.
Yeah, you said it, Ben. No brainer. It's really about as easy of a pick as we can get. And I think we're going to have the same type of decision for a reliever as well. At least I think there's a no brainer. But for Perk, a 1.12 ERA, 5-0 over 10 appearances, 8 of those being starts, 40 innings in a summer is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that he was able to go out there every 5 or 6 days and absolutely shove, only gave up 2 earned runs during the regular season, gave up 3 in that final appearance in the semifinals. But he's the definition, and we've been talking about it all episode long, but consistency. That's exactly what the Tom Sox needed from a guy of Mark Perkins' caliber, and he provided it.
Right. Jake, we can go to you again. Is there anyone else you want to mention in the starting pitcher category?
Yeah, I'm actually going to dispute this one and say I think the best starting pitcher for the Tom Sox this year was me. We all saw my first pitch. If you saw me take the mound, you knew that was heat. No, yeah, it's pretty clearly Perkins in my opinion. I got the regular season stats pulled up. 31 innings, 40 strikeouts in those 31. With a 0.58 ERA in that regular season. That's just tough to beat. I gave him a good run for it, but at the end of the day, got to give it to Perk.
Right. And anyone else have any pitchers they want to mention for the starting category? We can open up the floor here. But if there's nothing, we can move on to the reliever.
Yeah, sorry, Gianni. I just want to, or Dargo. Wow. Zoom's kind of weird. So I just want to talk more about the consistency of Mark Perkins. This guy had 6 consecutive starts of not allowing a run, and you talk about being the top of the guy at that being the top of the ace of the staff on the rotation. Mark Perkins was that for the Tom Sox all year, and you saw it on the biggest stage in the playoffs. The Tom Sox sent him out in a do-or-die game, and he provided a quality start, went 5 1/3 innings, only allowed 3 runs. You got it to the bullpen. You saw what the Tom Sox bullpen can do. Went in full effect, and that's what allowed them to defeat Strasburg and move on to the championship. But it was for Mark Perkins that got that start, went deep enough into the game, and got the bullpen some rest, and then the bullpen did their job. But he wasn't the only good starter. Zach Root, David Utagawa amongst the guys that I was thinking comparing them to Mark Perkins. But when you compared the numbers, Mark Perkins takes the cake.
Right. And there were a number of former Tom Sox drafted in the MLB draft this past year. I think that Mark Perkins is one of the many names that we could see in the draft in the coming years. So look out for that, as well as many other guys. Maltese, what do you have to add here?
So one thing I wanted to mention is out of the 10 games he did appear in, he had 5 wins and was not credited with a single loss. This guy, like Nathan said, and what we've all said, pure consistency. He also just found a way to get it done. I mean, come on. His worst start was allowing 3 runs in a near quality start if he got 2 more outs. He went 5 1/3. For a guy to give his worst start, allowing 3 runs, that tells the whole story.
That's incredible. I mean, Mark Perkins truly, he could have even been in conversation for MVP this year with how dominant he was on the mound. Nathan, you mentioned reliever. You mentioned that it was almost a no-brainer for that again. Who did you have for reliever?
Well, I think it's got to be Mike Eggert. There's definitely a lot of guys that could have been put in this category, and Mike was almost available to be that, or I should say nominated for starter of the year, given he made 4 starts and 11 appearances overall. But we've been talking about the consistency and what it takes to pitch at this kind of a level. And Mike did exactly what Mark did. A little less good of numbers, but still phenomenal. Had a 1.20 ERA overall rather than a 1.12. Made more appearances than Mark. Went 10 less innings. He went 30 overall. But opponents only hit 126 against Mike. And he doesn't have the highest velocity stuff to blow you away with the fastball, but he's got a wicked breaking ball. He can locate that fastball up in the zone, down in the zone, on the outer part of the plate to either the left or right-handed hitter. And that's what really did it for him this year, was that he was able to locate much better than he did last summer with the Tom Sox. And I think those final numbers prove why he's going to be my reliever of the year.
Right. Rocco, we'll go to you this time. Do you have anyone else to add for reliever?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to switch things up, not go with Eggert. He did have a dominant season, and he was that guy out on the mound for the Tom Sox. I'm going to go with Jordan Little, a guy who made just 5 appearances, but in those 5 appearances, he was dominant, struck out 28 hitters. And when you talk about Eggert not having that blow away fastball and that put away fastball, that was Jordan Little. He had his bread and butter. With that, he used it to get ahead of hitters, and his slider and that wipeout pitch got a lot of swings and misses. And everyone's going to remember that 4-inning performance back on July 11th where he struck out 11 hitters. He was dominant in that game, but just when you look at his numbers all throughout, he had 4+ strikeouts in every single appearance that he had this summer, allowed just 5 hits in 15 innings. And you talked about Eggert's batter or opponents hitting just around 100 against Mike Eggert. Hitters were hitting under 100 against Jordan Little, 098 to be exact. And Jordan Little was that guy coming out of the bullpen for the Tom Sox. But there's a plethora of guys that you could mention for this award.
You stole the words right out of my mouth. Jordan Little, as we were mentioning with Mark Perkins, his ERA, Jordan Little had a 1.20 ERA in 15 innings, which doesn't qualify him for the record, but it's still an incredible number. Jacob, do you have anything you want to add here for the relieving pitcher, either about these two guys or somebody else?
In my opinion, I feel like Eggert is probably the correct choice. But when I'm looking at relievers, just like I'm really looking for someone who makes me feel comfortable out on the mound. And a lot of times this season, that was Ryan Lynch for me. I think he just had that put away ability, the strikeout pitch, the stuff. He just had that kind of like X factor that I look for in a reliever. So I was really impressed with a lot of his performances here in the regular season. 22 1/3 innings, 31 strikeouts in those. He was just nasty for a good majority of the year. So, Eggert might be the logical pick here, but when I look out on the mound and see Ryan Lynch, usually I'm pretty content with that. So that'll be my pick.
Right, and what I've been talking about all season is the pure talent and the depth that the Tom Sox had in the bullpen all year. You could name 10 different guys for this award and it would fit the bill. Argo, you look like you have something to say here. What do you want to say for the relieving pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I have to go with Mike Eggert as well. People forget that this is actually his second season here. He was, I'd say it's probably very forgettable, given that he was here last year. He made 4 appearances, had an ERA around 7, and he was pitching hurt last year. And then he comes back and has one of the best seasons for a reliever that has ever happened here in Charlottesville. So a great bounce back for Mike. He was always here and happy to be here as well. I don't think you can discount that. But I do have to also shout out Ryan Lynch. I think, speaking of people forgetting, he had a 0 ERA up until his last appearance on the year, when he also, like Mike Eggert, was pitching hurt during that last appearance, gave up 5 earned runs. But before that, he had 19 innings, did not allow a run, struck out 27 batters. I mean, you can't really touch that kind of stuff from Ryan Lynch, and he was always dependable both out of the bullpen, and then he had one start at Harrisonburg as well, where we eventually lost the game, but he pitched outstanding in that game as well.
Yeah. Another name to mention here is Liam Best. He had a 1.29 ERA, 4 appearances, so not the most, 7 innings. But when he got on the mound, when he got the opportunity, he pitched really well, 11 strikeouts on the year. So another name to add there. Maltese, is there anything else you want to input here?
Yeah, in the 11 appearances that I'm also going with Eggert. In the 11 appearances in the games that he did appear in, he only allowed runs in 3 of those games. And in 2 of those games, it was only 1 run. So that's the statistic I'm going to be looking at. But it's just, you can't forget about that last game he pitched July 30th. He went 8 innings, allowed 2 runs, but had 7 strikeouts. And as we were mentioning, he kind of was lacking that last pitch to get that strikeout. But that game, it was a little bit different. So I got to give him credit, and I do feel like that is the correct answer, although there's some low-key answers you could come up with.
All right, and Gianna, close this out with the reliever of the year.
Well, I'm just going to go off of Jacob and Dargo. I was going to say Ryan Lynch. He had an incredible season. It would have been nice to see what he could have done in the postseason for us, but injuries started to approach him, so he sat out, which is fine. But it was really good to see him out there being a reliever, and we always knew he would put up a good performance for us.
Right. I mean, just to reiterate again, the talent that on this Tom Sox team this year was vast. There was so much talent, so much depth from top to bottom, whether it be in the lineup or whether it be in the bullpen. I think that it's just, it shows the effort that Jeff Bird and the Tom Sox team and all of these guys put in to come to Charlottesville and work on the game that they love during the summer.
Ben, I do want to add as well, just looking at a lot of these guys, if you looked at their college stats, you'd think that they pitched terribly in the summer. I mean, Mike Eggert's ERA was over 5. Ryan Lynch did not have a good season. Mark Perkins' ERA was over 8. Mike Eggert's velo, as you mentioned, was way down. But looking at all these guys in the actual season during the summer were outstanding. So I think it's just worth mentioning how much confidence these guys were able to build, both starters and relievers, during the season, and hopefully bringing that back into their college seasons.
That's super important. It just shows the depth of talent that's on any given college baseball roster. And they, may not even have the opportunity to pitch to their full capabilities, and summer baseball gets to let them live their passion out and hopefully make a name for themselves so they can get more playing time during the college season. Next award I have down here is Media Player of the Year. Dargo, this was kind of the award that you came up with. What were you thinking in terms of this award? And after you describe it, who would you give it to?
Yeah, for this award, I was sort of just thinking, who is somebody that was good to us all year, not in terms of their personality, not necessarily, but always accommodating to us, somebody who we could always count on to give us some words, and just wanted to be in this position and wanted to help us. So my awardee for this is Salvi Alvarez. I mean, you don't see too many players who go out there seeking an interview, but Salvi all year was begging us to be interviewed. He got his interviews. He always did great in them. And he was always just super nice and accommodating to all of us, in addition to his exploits on the field. So Salvi Alvarez is my Media Player of the Year.
Salvi, the catcher from Florida, now at Florida Southwestern, just an all-around super fun guy. Loves to be interviewed. As you said, I had him on this podcast. It was a great time. He was so happy, so appreciative, and I really appreciate him. John, I was wondering about this question from a TikTok perspective. Who gave the best TikTok answers? Who is the most, who wanted to do TikTok the most? Do you have anyone that stands out immediately?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of names I could say. TikTok perspective, all of the guys love doing it. They never they always surprise me with their answers, safe to say. But the person I'm going to go with, Jeremy Goins, always after games came up to 1 or 2 media people or any intern and was just thank you so much for everything that you guys do. So I know like he always appreciated it and would always like ask if like we needed help and stuff, like from like a promotions perspective. Also, like he was the guy to go to for like helping us find players to do the in-game activities, player interviews, and stuff like that. So he was very appreciative of everything that us media and every single intern of the Tom Sox did this season.
Maltese, this is kind of in your wheelhouse here. Is there anyone that stands out?
I'm going to have to go with Dave Utagawa. He also made a guest appearance on the mic, which, you know, not to float any boats, but I did get out of the spot so he could do it with my man, Nathan Schwartz. He was always there to talk to us. He was a class act guy. He's a hell of a player, but aside from just that, he was always willing to, you know, give us advice. He was very appreciative of what the analytics team did and, you know, judging the efficiency of pitching. But I mean, you got to give it to someone who made a guest appearance on the mic. So,
right. And I think this is as good a time as any to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Garrett Spikes. I mean, if you're talking about media player, Garrett Spikes. So anyone feel free. Tisdale, you can go first. Talk about the joy that is Garrett Spikes.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get is one thing. If we're talking about like for these other awards, consistency, you know, Garrett Spikes was the opposite of that. Every single day he came in, he'd bring something different and new and unique, which is always exciting from a media perspective because you want to be able to mix it up and have something new and different to say. And Garrett Spikes just epitomized that. Just one of the biggest personalities I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, he was very appreciative to the media team and everything that we do. He always made sure to extend those thanks and those courtesies to us. So Garrett Spikes is a great pick for this. I do want to shout out as well Sergio Rivera. You know, he's one of those guys a lot like Salvia as well, where some of these guys are about their business, ready to just get in there, get to work. But Sergio, Salvi, Spikes, a lot of these guys, them taking the time to come over, just give you a fist bump, ask you how your day is going, stuff like that is really meaningful to media workers. So I want to shout out Sergio as well there.
For sure. This is fun for us. And we do it to be able to interact with the players like you're talking about. So really appreciate guys like Salvi, Sergio, Utagawa, Spikes, all the guys that you're mentioning to, you know, take some time and be our friends. Nathan, Gianni mentioned the Utagawa appearance on Tom Sox TV. I'd have to assume that that's your media player of the year. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I got to go with my boy, David Utagawa. Just like being able to get to know him on a more personal level, like living with him at the host family house. He always appreciated, like Gianni said, what everybody did, what the promo team was doing, what the analytics team was doing, what the media team was doing, and really was asking me questions about like what people's roles were and how everybody went about it. He was a guy that loved doing the 50-50 raffle tickets. So he was really a guy that was willing to do it all and wanted to get the whole summer ball experience. This was his second summer team. He was in the Appalachian League last summer, so now coming to the Valley League, getting a more media perspective on things. I think he really enjoyed that. And then being able to put it forward and then helping us out by doing interviews and being really good on the TikTok and all that was definitely a big reason why I'm going to vote for him.
Rocco, is there a player that you want to shout out? Maybe they gave a good interview at one point, or they were always seeking the camera out. Who stands out to you?
Yeah, so I was going to go with Salvi Alvarez. I think that was the obvious answer, but Dargo touched on him. So I have two more underrated names. The first, I'm going to go with Brady Gumpf. It's a guy that always had a smile going around the field, always talked, made sure to always go out, talk to any intern that he saw. And what really stood out to me was before that last game in Harrisonburg, as he's warming up, he's just talking with Nathan and I, like casually just making conversations, asking what we're doing for the rest of the summer. And it's just that type of nice guy that you get. He really came on strong toward the end of the season, but he was a guy that always had a smile at the ballpark and played a lot more toward the end of the season, was a super nice guy. But you mentioned interviews, and I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on Braden Halliday. I got to talk to him a lot this summer, and he was a guy I sat down with for over 30 minutes and really got to know him as a person and know his story. And he's one of the nicest people that I ever met. Super funny, always seeking out the camera. I personally wasn't really a part of many of the TikToks, but would always watch them, always saw Braden's answers. They typically always made me laugh, always kept it loose, never really knew what you were going to get, but I think both Braden and Brady saw it at the camera and were super nice guys to not only me, but the rest of the intern team.
And two names I want to mention before we move on to the next award here. Davian Garcia, Aiden Teal, you always saw them in the handshake line in the highlight videos post-game from Argo's camera, from Emmy's camera. So, just giving us good tidbits for the film and for the, all the social media that we really like to enjoy here and all the fans really appreciate. Next award we want to move on to is Underrated Player of the Year. This is sort of ambiguous. You can kind of take it where you want. I have two names mentioned. They are two names that some people have already mentioned in the past. Maltese, on the previous podcast, you complained about always going last, so everybody took your answer. I'll give you the opportunity now to go first to name your underrated player.
I'm going to have to go with Sergio Rivera, and thank you for letting me go. I'm going to have to go with Sergio Rivera. I mean, a lot of this has to do with the postseason, but he was Mr. Clutch in the postseason, and in the regular season, I can't name another player who was willing and not necessarily willing, kind of had to, but the sacrifice bunts was the name of the game in this Lyndon Coleman-esque style of play. He was always willing to lay down that bunt, and, that doesn't get enough credit. So I'm going to give him where credit's due.
That's exactly my pick there. Tisdale, who do you pick for the underrated player of the year for the 2023 Tom Sox?
Yeah, so I'm going to go in a different direction here, and I'm going to say Jeremy Goins. I think, he got off to a bit of a shaky start in his second appearance. When he came out, his ERA was at a 15.43, but he did a great job over the course of the season of kind of steadying that ship, doing his job, getting consistent outings. As a reliever, sometimes it's not a super rewarding position as you're put into difficult situations. He collected 2 losses over the course of the season, but I'm giving this award to him solely on the basis of his playoff performance against the Strasburg Express. He went 3 2/3 innings, 10 strikeouts, just 1 hit, collected a save there. He was just absolutely nails in a very tight game where you needed him to be perfect. He was pretty much perfect in that outing. I think that was a very underrated performance for a pitcher who, had that shaky start, but then really steadied the ship and, maintained strength through the rest of the season.
Right. And Argo, because we're switching up the order here a little bit, I'll let you go now. Who's your underrated player?
I was going to go with Sergio Rivera. He set this team stolen base record in addition to everything everybody's already said. I don't think that's discounted. I remember Alex did an interview with Zach Cole, his head coach at Florida Southwestern, who told a story about how he just magically ended up on second base on a single just based on his pure speed. And I think he had the best pure speed of anybody on the roster.
Right.
But to switch it up a little bit, I'll go specifically at the plate with Chris Arroyo, who, if there was no batting average limit, he would have led the team 367 batting average. Specifically, second half of the year, he really heated up. 16 RBIs, 13 walks to only 15 strikeouts. I don't think we can discount that either, and had 8 doubles on the year. So Chris Arroyo, specifically later in the year, was super underrated.
I definitely agree with that. And Arroyo is one of those players that we have a plethora of on this year's Tom Sox that are two-way. We've seen a revolution of two-way players in baseball at all levels over the past couple years. And I would attribute a large part of that to Shohei Ohtani. Nathan, can we see what you've got for the underrated player of the year?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the guy on the mound for this one. He wasn't around the last couple of weeks, so might kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But I'm going to go with Zach Root. Made five appearances overall for the Sox, 4 starts, a 1.50 ERA, 2-0, 18 innings pitched. Another one of these guys that really just went out there and performed well in each one of his appearances. Only gave up 3 earned runs in those 5 appearances, and also had 22 strikeouts. So a little over 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. And he was another one of these guys that's the name of this award, right? Like flying under the radar, not necessarily getting the recognition that you deserve. He was kind of overlooked a little bit by the likes of his former teammate at ECU, Jordan Little, and the guys we already mentioned with Perk and Mike Eggert and all those other guys. So I'm going to go with Zach Root because I think what he was able to do on the mound late June, early July was really impressive.
Right, totally. Gianna, you can go next, and Rocco can close us out.
So I'm going to go in a little different route for this one and go with Luke Calveric, just for the sole reason when we were in our championship series, we were down a ton of players. He's a pitcher for the team, and he ended up having to play in the infield first base. He had 7 at-bats, 1 run, and 2 hits, and he's never been up to the plate, something that he's not used to. So it was really cool and amazing to see him to take on that challenge and put his best foot forward. So I would give him underrated player for that reason.
It's a nice under the radar pick that I don't think anybody would have thought of. And that's another element of summer baseball that sort of goes under the radar as well, is that players have to shift around sometimes, like in the case of the Tom Sox in the playoffs. There aren't enough players to have everybody play their comfortable position. So as Daryl Morey and James Harden say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Rocco, close us out here.
Yeah, so there were a lot of good answers. I'm going to go with Nathan Fink. It's a guy that really struggled in the beginning to drive the ball, didn't have an RBI in his first 7 games, but when the stretch run really came, he exploded offensively, and a guy who, when you needed a big hit out of the cleanup spot, it was Nathan Fink who provided it. He always got on base, but what really stood out to me was in the playoffs against Strasburg, he came out on the mound. The game was a 9-4 contest, and he provided that stability out of the bullpen. He went 1 1/3 innings, struck out 2 guys, and it was his performance out on the mound that we went into that inning 9-5, and just the home runs kept flowing. Henry Ford, Jacob Ferentz, and then obviously Kyle Edwards. But it was Nathan Fink's performance that allowed the Sox to get to that comeback. But ultimately, his offensive performance at the end of the season got him this award from me.
Right. And I have 3 names I want to mention here. First is Sergio Rivera, who has been mentioned a number of times this so far. He led the team in stolen bases. Whenever the team needed a stolen base, he pinch ran and got in. That's another big thing with Lyndon Coleman's philosophy. Every guy counts on the roster, top to bottom of the bullpen, every single player in the dugout there. And Sergio Rivera, he was key. Every time he got his name called, he knew what he had to do, and he did it very, very well. And that's exactly right to Coach Lyndon Coleman's philosophy, as he was telling me. David Ugalva is another name I want to shout out. I feel like he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, even though he is one of the better pitchers. Perkins' name gets mentioned a lot, Little's name, Root's name, Eggert's name. But I feel like David Ugalva, and especially his performance on August 1st in the playoffs, then Tom Sox record 114 pitches, a career high 11 strikeouts, only 5 1/3 innings, but just an incredible performance from Ugalva on the August 1st there in the playoffs. So that's a name. And another name I want to mention here is Jordan Little. Even though he was named VBL All-South, I feel like he sort of gets lost and buried under maybe it's Perkins, maybe it's Root, maybe it's Eggert. I feel like that even though he got that recognition from the league, he still sort of goes under the radar. So I think that this again shows the depth and the power, the consistency, the talent on the Tom Sox this year. Next award up is Underclassman of the Year. This is qualified as a rising. Oh, Dargo had something to want to say. Sorry about that.
I just want to say if we're talking about Dave's pitches record, I think we got to shout out Garrett Spikes as an underrated, not hitter, but pitcher at the end of the year. I mean, he'd made a couple appearances in his first couple years here at the Tom Sox, but this year, 5 appearances. I mean, let's just ignore the ERA because after he had some bad first innings, but after his first inning, he really was pretty good out there on the mound, but struck out 15 guys as a position player who'd never pitched in college, set records for both pitches in a game. He had 117 pitches in the championship game when we were down to like 13 players, threw 117 pitches in a start, in a game that ended up being decided not when he was on the mound, but later on in the game. And then also set a record in that game for most batters faced. So I think if we're talking underrated on the mound, then you got to give Garrett Spikes some consideration.
Right. Garrett Spikes is just an all-around winner, Mr. Tom Sox, for, I imagine, the rest of history. Build the statue, retire the number, name it Garrett Spikes Field. I mean, you just can't say enough about Garrett Spikes.
Well, here's the question. What number are you going to retire?
Oh, that will be debated. Why not all three? Freshman of the year, as I was saying, or underclassman of the year, which is a rising freshman or sophomore. There are a couple ways you could go with this pick. Mine went to Henry Ford, who got mentioned for the MVP. He got mentioned for the hitter of the year. His numbers speak for themselves, and UVA is going to pick up a good one here in a couple of months. Dargo, you, I assume, had something to say here. Who's your underclassman of the year?
So I know who most people are going to pick, so I'm going to pick somebody different. I think most people are going to pick Henry Ford, which is obvious given everything we said the first couple of awards. But I'm going to go with a different answer here because of that. I'm going to go with Lucas Cash, another returning player. Last year, he made a couple appearances for the Sox as a rising freshman in Bluefield College, only allowed 1 run in 6 innings. Came in for the late playoff run and then did the same thing this year. Came in late in the year and shut him down, allowed 3 runs at 11 innings, gave a really strong appearance at the second to last game before the playoffs against Front Royal, where he pretty much won us that game by just shutting down the Cardinals. But he had some clutch blood in his genes. He was always positive again at the ballpark, which I don't think is an underrated thing to look at. But yeah, Luke, other than Henry Ford, who I think is the clear answer to this, I think Lucas Cash has a really bright future wherever he goes after going to JUCO this year.
Right. And as you mentioned Henry Ford, as I mentioned Henry Ford, Aiden Teal, Jacob Ferentz make up just an incredible UVA trio on this year's Tom Sox team. Tisdale, you want to talk a little bit about that UVA trio and especially the 2 rising underclassmen?
Yeah, man, it's just an exciting time to be a Cavalier baseball fan, coming off the College World Series run this year. I don't want to talk about what happened once we made it there, but getting there is an accomplishment. And then, you have the departing talent of Jake Geloff, Kyle Teal, all these guys, and you could become worried, but you look at the people we're recruiting, pulling in, and you're just really comfortable with the job that Coach Brian O'Connor is doing with this UVA squad, because the talent is just replenishing itself. You see a hole open up and a great player comes along to fill it right up. So it's just super exciting. And I see, we had the College World Series run this year, but I see the ceiling for the players coming in to be even higher as we kind of pursue that next national championship.
Right. And Rocco, moving away from UVA, is there anyone else you want to mention in terms of underclassmen of the year?
Yeah, I go Salvi Alvarez. We talked about him having a positive attitude, and he was struggling really toward the midway point of the year, and it was around midway and through July where he was just hitting 136, and then he went on an absolute tear to end the regular season, ended up hitting 316, had 6 RBIs, drew 12 walks, only struck out 11 times, but it was just the approach that he had at the plate really shortened his swing, especially with 2 strikes, and hitting at the bottom of the order, rotating with guys like Calvin Alexander, Jacob Ferentz at that catcher spot. You're not playing every day, so you can't really build on the at-bats that you have, say, the day prior, because you have to sit 2 days to let the other guys play. But Alvarez, when he got his reps and got his at-bats, he was really something special. Toward the bottom of that order, had a 10-game on-base streak to cap off the season, and when the Tom Sox needed a hit, it was Salvi Alvarez who provided and just provided a spark at the bottom of the order, him and Sergio Rivera.
Right. And for the sake of time, I kind of want to get moving on to a couple more awards. Unless anyone has anything.
Ben, can I cut you off real quick?
Please.
Sorry. I just want to mention one thing about Aiden Teal and as to why he would be underclassman of the year is not even his like in-game performance, what he was doing on the sideline. I don't know if you guys noticed it because you guys were mostly in the box. I was near the field majority of the time, but Aiden would always give his teammates advice, especially Henry, because Henry's never played college ball. He's coming right out of college. And you don't see that in a lot of underclassmen stepping up, being a leader and helping future teammates. So I just wanted to shout out Aiden on that aspect of he was a great leader and always willing to help his teammates. Sorry.
I can just bounce off you on that. I remember the third game of the season. He showed up in the middle of the season, really didn't know anybody other than Henry on the team. And by the third game he was here, he was already leading the team huddle before they went out on the mound. I think that speaks to his infectious personality. I remember talking with UVA's esteemed sports information director, Scott Fitzgerald. I just asked him, is this what he's like all the time? Or is this just like a summer ball thing? And he's like, yeah, he's like Kyle times 100%. In terms of his personality. And I think that's such a great thing to have for your baseball team, especially as somebody who should be a rising freshman in college. Remember, he reclassified to go spend the year at UVA with Kyle. Somebody who should be a rising freshman in college, being a team leader on a team full of older guys, I think is definitely something that should be considered.
And that's something that he mentioned to me, that he takes a lot of pride in his leadership day in and day out and helping the team win in any way possible, whether it be here or at UVA. So I think Aiden Teal definitely has a bright future ahead of him, not only from what he can do on the mound, in the plate, in the field, but also from what he brings to the team in the intangibles perspective. As I was saying, game of the year, I want to mention next. This is, almost as hard as an award as any. Mine's a random pick. I don't think anybody else is going to say it, but the doubleheader in Stanton on July 17th, the Tom Sox broke numerous franchise records in terms of runs scored. The first game was 19-2 in 5 innings. The second was 11-1 in 5 innings. It was a fun game. It kind of rained there for a bit, so we were hoping it wouldn't. But just to spit a few stats from those games, the 19 runs in game 1 are a team record, as is the 17-run margin of victory. Across the 2 games, the Tom Sox hitters struck out 6 times while walking 18 times, and their 11 walks in game 1 were the high on the season. And the Tom Sox had scored 8 first-inning runs across the 2 games after only averaging 0.8 first-inning runs per game in their first 28 games. So I think that this game, just in terms of record broken, it was a ton of fun to be at. Great night in Stanton there. Argo, you're smirking there. Is there anything you want to add on this game?
No, I mean, it was just incredible to watch. You and I were there as everyone else was out there celebrating our guy Rocco's 21st birthday. But I think they missed a couple things with just how crazy those 2 games were. As you mentioned, the threat of rain ending a game and having to go back to Stanton was certainly there as well. And Coach Lyndon Coleman coming up to me and asking, how many runs do we need to score to set the record? And we ended up falling one run short of tying the team record for runs scored. But I don't think 19-2, which ties the margin of victory, as you mentioned, is anything to scuff at.
No, absolutely not. And as I said, there are a ton of games here to mention. Tisdale, that smile on your face, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I'm picking a game that the Tom Sox lost, and it is the regular season finale in that weird double header against Percival. Just in terms of pure entertainment value, that game was nuts. You had so many different moving pieces going on. The Tom Sox seemed to have secured their position in the postseason. Percival was mathematically eliminated the game before. It could have been a boring, standard nonsense game, throwing in the towel. Instead, Coach Lennon Coleman throws absolutely everything at the wall. I have to shout out Quinn Stromberg getting that base knock in there. He was also the starting pitcher, which is just absurd. We saw Garrett Spikes behind the dish after pitching well deep into the game prior to complete his kind of checklist of playing every position for the Tom Sox. I mean, what didn't happen in this game? Like it was just also the environment of it. It was hot, miserable in Percival. We actually had an umpire have heat stroke in there. So it was just a mad day. I'm picking it for game of the year because I've never been more tapped into what's happening with this team, seeing all the different defensive alignments, all the different things happening. And of course, you have to mention that this was a close game. It was 7-9. In the bottom of the seventh, we saw Garrett Spikes hit an absolute shot to the wall that looked like it was going to change the tide of this game. And the Tom Sox were going to win it. Of course, he did a bit of a like anime Naruto run into second base and gets tagged out, but just absolute madness from that game. And it was easily my favorite game to cover for the Tom Sox this year.
Gianna, you're laughing here. Tell me what you remember from this afternoon.
Oh, I wasn't there at this game, but I was watching it on the live stream, and it was just comical. Like to see like our pitchers going at bat and like trying to swing at the ball was like the most like comical thing that like I've ever seen. And I don't know, but like it just shows like the Tom Sox is like as serious as we are, we still can have fun too. And like I think that speaks lengths for this organization.
Right. At the end of the day, these players play this game because they love it. They have a passion for baseball. We cover this game because we have passion for the sport, for covering athletics like baseball, like the Tom Sox. At the end of the day, it's just supposed to be fun. So that's definitely a game I want to shout out. Does anyone have any more games that they want to mention on the year? Yeah, Maltese, you go ahead here.
Yes, so I can't talk about this without mentioning we were down 9-4 against Strasburg in game 2 at their place in the 8th inning. We tacked on a run, and then we were down by 4 in the 9th. And we hit a couple home runs, and the next thing you know, we were down to our last out. Enter A-Bay, Kyle Edwards, who hit an absolute pimp daddy shot to tie the game, and we went on to advance after winning game 3 in round 2 versus the Express. You cannot talk about game of the year without mentioning that absolute moonshot.
Right. Rocco was your mention for the game of the year.
Well, Gianni, I mean, I love the pick, but you have to say in Strasburg, going back to the regular season, back on July 8th, and you talk about pimp daddies, I think the home run that Derek Williams hit in the 9th inning of that game is still traveling. That's how far he hit it. That was his second home run of the game, and Charlottesville had the lead in that contest, but the bullpen, one of their rare performances that they didn't really have it in that game. Strasburg took the lead, and it was looking bleak in the 9th inning. Derek Williams came up, hit a leadoff home run, tied the game up, and Kyle Edwards was the hero in extra innings. But we talked about Derek Williams being that underrated guy. Wasn't here for the longest time, but that game, 2 home runs really provided the spark, and that was just a fun atmosphere at the ballpark. I know Nate and I were there sitting right near the dugout. The guys were loving it, having a lot of fun, and it was a massive comeback win that helped the Sox spark a rally toward the end of the season.
Right. And Nate, if it hasn't been mentioned yet, do you have a game of the year?
Well, so I had 4 written down. Semifinals game 2 at Strasburg, which Gianni mentioned. That July 8th game at Strasburg, which Rocco just mentioned. The game 2 in the Percival doubleheader, which we talked about a good bit. But also the 4th one I had written down was game 1 of that doubleheader in Percival. That's in my opinion, the Garrett Spikes legacy game on the mound. He went 7 2/3 innings in that playoff game, but just going back to what he did in game 1 of that doubleheader, he goes 6 innings, 9 hits up 5 earned, walked 3, struck out 7. And this is just a 6-inning game. So the fact that he was able to go 6 innings, it was a resumption of a game that got postponed about 2 weeks prior. And then he also just was always energetic in the dugout. And this is a game that we were trailing 6-1 after the 3rd inning. And then we put up 7 runs in the top of the 4th inning, come all the way back, add another couple runs, up 11-7 going into the bottom of the 7th. Or no, it was 11-6. 11-6 going into the bottom of the 7th. And Kyle Edwards actually comes into pitch in this game, gives up a bases clearing double. And I know me, Gianni, Alex, and Jake are all sitting there like, is Kyle actually about to blow this game? Like, are we about to lose? But then he gets a clutch pop fly to Jackson Delana, who's one of the better players on the Percival team. And that was that. We won game 1, which set up that infamous game 2 that we just talked about. So I think all 4 of those games are going to go down in Tom Sox history and games that I will remember the most from this summer.
Yeah, and more things that'll go down in Tom Sox history. This next award is Moment of the Year. So similar to Game of the Year, but this is a moment or a memory or a story from the season that when you look back in 5 years, in 10 years, in however many years, you look back on this summer, what Drew calls the greatest summer of our lives, which is pretty close to that. What's the moment that you'll look back and it'll stick out in your memory? Argo, you head first.
I'll give my Game of the Year first because I got unfairly skipped over. I'm going to go the same direction as Nathan with this one. I'm going to go with the game on June 29th against Stanton. First game of an 8-game win streak of that game. Derek Williams hits a 3-run home run in the 7th inning to be the only runs for the Tom Sox in the game. But we were coming off a 2-game losing streak in that game. And really what seemed like the worst part of the season, like this team could go to be under 500 if they didn't win this game. Playing a bad Stanton team, it was a must-win game. It seemed like we were going to lose the game after trailing 2-0 most of the game. But then Derek hits that home run, gives us a 3-2 lead, and we go on to win 8 straight games after that, the second longest win streak in the team's history. I think that is pretty special. And then my moment of the year, I'm going to go off of what Gianni said the last time. I mean, it's got to be that 9th inning against Strasburg where we hit 3 home runs, the 3rd time we've ever hit 3 home runs in an inning. The first time since a guy named Wyatt Langford. I don't know if you might have heard of him, where it was part of one back in 2021 against Stanton. But a hitter-friendly park. It seemed like we were out of it. I remember I was planning what I was going to do the first day of the season was over. After that, and then I remember I was talking with Luke Calveric, who was coaching first base, and I'm like, what are we going to do tomorrow once this game is over? And all of a sudden, Henry Ford hits a home run. Jacob Ferentz hits a home run right after him. And then a couple batters later, Kyle Edwards hits that absolute pimp shot out to left center field. And your Tom Sox come home with an extra inning victory there. So, I mean, I think that's the no-brainer moment of the year and the game that defines this team the best.
Right. Tisdale, we'll start you with moment of the year after Dargo. Do you have a moment of the year that sticks out?
I really don't know how you can pick anything other than Kyle's bomb here. But to give some diversity to the answers, I will once again return to my first pitch. That was clearly the moment of the year. But a close runner-up is also karaoke night on a rainy night at Cho Airport Field. The loyal fans were regaled with a beautiful rendition of Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison by 2 excellent singers. I don't know who they were, but they brought the house down, is what the crowd was saying. So those are two moments to kind of diversify the answers from that just monumental Kyle. What was it? Pimp Daddy shot, I believe.
Maltese, any follow-up?
I heard that those 2 singers should actually try out on a professional level. I'd really like to know their names, but since I already said the game of the year, I can't, that really was kind of my answer for both, but I don't want to be boring. So for the moment of the year, I'm going to have to go with our backs against the wall in game 3 against Strasburg Express at home. We had that huge 4th inning that led to a 5-run outburst. That was one of the key moments of the series, just being able to go the distance, and then Goins coming in. Oh my goodness. That was just a heck of a game and unforgettable moment for me.
Sounds like you switched your answers.
Well, there's a game of the year and then a moment of the year. Game of the year.
There is a distinction.
Game of the year was being down by 5 in the 8th and clawing our way back. Moment
Sounds like a good moment.
I think you should let the analysts have their opinion, Dargo. I love you so much.
Gianna, from a TikTok perspective again, is there a question or an answer that sticks out? Remember, keep it PG, which it say between PG and PG-13, but is there a question or an answer that sticks out?
Okay, so I was going to say my moment of the year was TikTok by far. Honestly, best question was, who on the team would you not let date your daughter? That was really funny, but I had like the most fun miking up Spikes and Aiden Teal and even Kyle Edwards, because the Kyle Edwards one, we saw a little bit of like a soft side of him where he like took a kid around pregame, and like that was really cool. But Spikes and Aiden were just comedy. And I had to say, like, the guys, I think they like doing the TikTok, at least I did, because like you got to see that these guys were fun too and not all just baseball. You got to learn a lot about them. So I would say TikTok overall was like my favorite moment of the year.
Nathan, your moment of the year?
Well, I got a little different perspective of the Kyle Edwards 2-run bomb than everybody else did. I was in the dugout recording the at-bat for the Instagram story, and I was the only one that tracked the ball as it was going. So Emmy and Dargo were tracking Kyle and got the bat flip, great shots. But I got the ball. So just having that footage on my phone of Kyle hitting the ball, it going the distance, and then immediately when I pan to Kyle, Spikes cuts in front of the camera and is just cheering him on the loudest than anybody else in the dugout. Spikes and Kyle, we know, have one of the biggest bromances, if not the biggest bromance in all human history. So just seeing that interaction was cool. And another part of that I want to build off on is before the inning even started, Coach Brian Worth, B-Dub, calls me over because I'm in the dugout. He is like, "Yo, Nate, we're going to win this game." I was like, there's just no actual chance we're going to win this game. Down by 4. All Strasburg has to do is get 3 outs, and they're advancing to the championship. And he was like, I'm telling you, there's too much talent in this dugout for us to lose this game. We've done it before, and we're going to do it again. And what do you know? Henry hits the home run. Jacob Ferentz hits the home run. And then Kyle hits the 2-run home run. And just like that, it's a tied game. And then everybody else in the dugout knew at that point, once Kyle hit the home run, that there was no way the season was going to end that night in Strasburg. So just from all 3 of those standpoints, that's why that's my moment of the year.
Right. This just speaks again to how fun this season was. Moment of the year can also be described as game of the year. July 6th, the Tom Sox were down 4-0 heading into the 9th after what was kind of a boring game. The Cannons scored 1 run in each of the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. And then Tom Sox come back to improbably score 5 runs in the bottom of the 9th. And in his one game of the call for the year, Dargo had an absolutely electric call fit for the comeback. Just that sliding play back into home plate there. That's a play I'll never remember. And this is a segue into how I want to close out here. From myself and from everybody that's been on the Tom Sox media team over the past 7 years, anyone that's been in the Charlottesville community, I want to give a last shout out to the man, the myth, the legend, David Argo. Tom Sox TV and the greatest media production in the VBL would be nothing without Dargo. And I want to say thank you for all you've done for me personally, the countless other up and coming media stars if anyone has anything they'd like to say about Dargo, the floor is yours. Maltese, I think that you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just really want to say it. I think, Dargo, you seriously have done more than I've worked with a lot of sports and helped out with a lot of things, but this opportunity has seriously been unlike any other. It really does feel like family. Like, in all seriousness, it feels like family every day. I have a great time. I think I speak for us all when I just am able to thankfully say, like, you are the heartbeat. And the days where you were hard on yourselves was just crazy to me, because I was like, dude, I don't know, especially calling the games from that perspective. Your game notes were some of the most incredible game notes I've ever seen in my life. So you're going to do amazing things. And I just want to thank you, like, seriously, for how much you've done to this organization. I've only been part of it for 1 year and 1 season, but oh my goodness, like, for you doing this 7 seasons, you deserve all the credit in the world. And I'm genuinely thankful and blessed to have this opportunity.
For sure. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, there's a saying, I believe it goes something like, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And that is how I would describe the Tom Sox media interns, on the shoulders of one giant, David Argo, carrying us forward. The game notes, absolute lifesavers. Anything that you need help with, you need done, anything at all that can happen, Dargo is going to get that done for you. And so I just want to wrap up. I want to quote my fellow media intern, Alex Rocco, here, and his eponymous phrase, "I heart Dargo."
Iconic.
Dargo.
Yeah. Rocco, you got name dropped here. What do you want to say?
Yeah, so I just want to thank Dargo. I've been hearing about Dargo for the past 3 summers now, just from the fellow Penn State interns that have come to Charlottesville, and everyone's like, oh my God, if you ever come to Charlottesville, you have to meet David Argo. He's super talented, super hardworking. So I've been hearing you back since the summer of 2021, and finally getting the opportunity to work with you. I know I talked to you about this after the final game of the year. You're the most talented person that I've ever met, just from a video production wise, editing wise, calling games, doing PA, writing. There is not anything that you can't do. And you helped me so much. I grew so much this summer. And that's where the statement of I Heart Dargo came from, because it was just the one way where I could show how grateful I am for you, of saying I Heart Dargo. And man, I am so grateful that I met you, and super excited to see all the big things that you do in the future.
Nate, you want to say something here?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of it's been said already, but this man can't do anything that he doesn't put his mind to. And the fact that not only was it from a shooting game perspective, but also all the editing that you did after the game, staying in the press box to who knows how long, because we were all back at our respective apartments or houses or whatever, doing our own thing. But there you were in the early hours in the morning, still grinding, whether it be editing a recap, editing, fixing anything, purchasing new cables so that anybody that was doing the call could actually sound good the next day. Literally just all the game day stuff itself, whether it's troubleshooting the broadcast equipment, doing Point Street, DJing, doing the scoreboard, doing the write-up, being down on the field shooting, whatever it was, you did it 110% and you thrived at it. And I don't think any of us would have had as good of an experience with the Tom Sox if you weren't a part of it. So thank you. I heart Dargo too.
Gianna?
I think everybody hit all the right points about you, Dargo. I just want to say thank you so much. I've never met somebody that has so much patience. Also, like, you're very patient with every single one of us and is so willing to go out of your way to help us and make us better. And like, I'm lost for words sometimes because I don't know like how you do it. And just like, thank you so much. Like, I've learned so much from you and I'm truly grateful to know you, and you're going to do amazing things in your future. So thanks, Dargo. We heart Dargo.
I definitely have to echo everything that everybody has said so far. While working with the Tom Sox and ESPN and all of these great ventures over the years, he's also been getting his high school degree and then his degree from UVA. So just a testament to hard work and what hard work can do. Dargo, I'll leave the floor to you if there's anything you want to say about your 7 years with the Tom Sox.
Well, I appreciate everything everybody has said. I remember everybody gave me a word I can't say on this broadcast at the beginning of this year because I said I wasn't going to come back. I said last year was going to be my last year. I threw out the first pitch at the championship game. We won the championship game. I posed with all the trophies, all that. And then I was searching for internships. I was 24 hours away from applying for the ESPN internship, but I didn't do it. I just couldn't find I couldn't find it in me to leave after just leaving one summer left open. I felt like we had more to do. Drew was bragging on all you guys for how good of a class you were going to be. In typical Drew fashion, he was saying, "Oh, this is going to be the best class yet." I don't know if he lied. I'm not here to judge intern classes. I'm not going to do that. People have asked me to pick my favorite interns. I'm not going to do that. But this has definitely been one of the best classes we've had. Thanks to all of you. I'm very glad I came back for one more year. And I know that it's going to be left in good hands once I'm done.
Yeah, Dargo, on to bigger and better things in the wide world of sports. Drew always said from the beginning of the summer that
I heart all of you. Thank you.
Drew always said at the beginning of the summer to now that this would be the best summer of our lives. I think that, at least for me, it's come pretty close to that. The memories we've made will last a lifetime. If anyone wants to share any last memories with the Tom Sox this season, the floor is open. But it's just all a testament to the great people on the media team, the players, and the entire Tom Sox staff. So the floor is open to anyone if they want to share some memories from the season. Rocco, I think you wanted to go first here.
Geez, put me on the spot to start off. I don't even know where to begin. This summer was, you mentioned it, Drew said it all the time, but this summer was definitely the best summer of my life. Working with all of you and the other interns, there was never a dull moment that we had, whether it was Gianni and Jake singing karaoke or Nate and I prepping for a broadcast or staying up late playing MLB The Show together. It was, you never knew what to expect each and every day together. And that was how fun it was because there was always a new adventure. And I loved every single second of it, getting to know all the players, but especially you guys. You guys are my best friends. I can't wait to see all the big things that you guys do next year. And hopefully we all get to work together in the future because that would be awesome. We were definitely the dream team this summer, and I'm super excited for you guys' futures.
Jordan Year, Maltese.
I just want to say thank you to all of you guys, especially Dargo, Nathan, and Rocco for always helping me when I was put on the mic because it's something that I am used to, but for the Tom Sox, it wasn't really something I was specifically brought into, and they were kind enough to help share their stats. And I will say the majority of the time, I helped out, but you guys, had the basis for all of it. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, because I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. And for all the friendships I built, oh my gosh, man, I'm just so happy I was part of this team this summer. I really am. And they weren't lying when it said it was going to be the best summer. Especially for the nights you work so much. You have to be ready to, come in, and you really do, especially if you try to work on those days where other people take off. You work a lot of games in a row. So, a big part of it is you have to have fun outside of baseball. And man, those nights we were able to go to coops and, it's just, it really is. It's really nice getting to know each other on that kind of level as well, especially for the people that are 21 and were able to go to coops. It was just an amazing experience, especially, the aftermath of, just really getting to know people in an interesting way on the lawn. It really was great.
Jacob, did you have anything to add to this favorite memory of the season recap?
No, I don't have too much more to add. I do want to thank everyone. We all helped each other out. We all, if someone needed days, we'd cover for each other. And I appreciate everyone who did that for me. I learned a lot of new things. I had only really had experience in the writing angle of sports media. And so to get exposure and experience with just people who have that experience and knowledge to share with you was really special. And I feel like I'm coming away from it a lot more well-rounded and more ready to kind of pursue this kind of career path, I suppose. So thank you guys for, taking care of me and making sure I get through this and come out on the other side grown and improved. And just knowing that if Dargo believes in me, I can do anything.
Well-rounded is definitely a good word to use. Gianna, do you have a memory that will stick out either on the field or off the field?
There's so many memories from this summer. This was by far the best summer I've ever had. I think I cried like 5-10 times when the season was done. I did not want the Tom Sox seasons to be over with, but just everybody that's part of the Tom Sox was so nice, so helpful. I can thank every single one of you guys for making me a better person, a better media person also, and like advancing my career. Rocco, Dargo, shout out to you guys for answering my texts really late at night when I was struggling to get writing recaps done. I couldn't have done that without you guys. Nate, thank you so much for always helping me with like post-game videos and like interviews, and like Johnny and Jacob, you also did the same thing. Like you guys always had my back and supported me, and like I'm so grateful and thankful for that. Favorite memory like off the field was just like getting to know everybody. Here's a little fun fact about Sergio Rivera. He loves karaoke, and some nights we got him karaoke nights. So Sergio, actually every single one of those guys loved karaoke. So if you ever see them, ask them to sing and hopefully they'll do it. But those are always good memories. But thank you guys so much for the best summer of my life.
And last but not least here, Nathan Schwartz.
Yeah, so looking back, there's so many collegiate summer baseball teams out there, and I applied to a lot of them. But the fact that I landed on the Tom Sox is something that I will never forget, because Drew originally reached out to me, asked me if I wanted to come here last summer. And if I would have come here last summer, I wouldn't have gotten to know this group right here. And so the fact that I came here this summer and I was able to make friendships that are going to last, I hope, for a lifetime, is really just amazing to me. And the fact that a summer baseball team can mean so much to not only me, but as we've heard, to each and every one of you guys as well, is really amazing. So thank you for making me laugh for those 8 or 9 weeks that we were together, and making me feel at home with you guys as well. And then a memory I want to share, I'll call us the Goon Squad. And I think that's a pretty accurate representation of this group right here. But one thing we would always do is go get ice before all of the games, the home games at least. And one day it was me, Gianni, Alex, and Jake going to get ice. And me and Gianni would always be the ones to close the gate and make sure it was locked at the high school before we drove back. And we'd always take Rocco's car. And on this particular day, he thought it would be funny to drive off before we were done closing the gate. And sure enough, Rocco and Jake take off, and they're zooming down the road. And me and Gianni had just finished closing the gate, and we're like, we're going to run after him. So we start running after him. We don't catch up. But me and Gianni are like, we're still going to run back. We're not just going to walk. So we start running back. And if you're familiar with the landscape of Charlottesville High School, there's a massive hill on top of the outfield that you have to go down. And me and Gianni are running down this thing full speed. And we get through the first part of the hill, no problem. Second part of the hill, Gianni just starts to tumble, and Gianni goes down. He's got grass stains all over his shorts. And keep in mind, this man is field reporting in about 35 minutes from when we're running down this hill. And so he's like scrambling, like, yeah, I've got grass stains all over my shirt, all over my shorts. So I have to give Gianni my extra pair of khaki shorts just so he can go and do his field reporting. And that is something I will never forget. So that's my message. Share, and once again, thank you all you guys, especially Argo, which we already mentioned, but you all mean a lot to me, and this was a phenomenal summer.
What a story to close it out here. I think everybody hit the nail on the head. These are stories, memories that will last a lifetime. As I was saying before, we do this for fun, and this summer was definitely more than fun, exceeded everybody's expectations, I assume, by far. One last shout out I want to give before I let everybody go is Maya Beeling, who couldn't be on this conversation with us today, but she helped us out a lot through the majority of the season, and in turn doing whether it was TikTok, social media, you name it. Maya just really helped the Tom Sox team and was really a good addition to the team this year.
No, I didn't actually say this, and I'd feel terrible if I didn't. I really want to say thank you to the players for their cooperation, and they never failed to like ask us how our day was going, and little things like that seriously just make the day feel so much more worth it. They always were cooperating with us. They wanted to be part of the team and the atmosphere, and it really is a culmination of the Tom Sox organization. Like, we really are a family. So I just
really a family. Respect is a word that you would use for both sides. The players respect the media. The media has the utmost respect for the players, and I think that shows from top to bottom. And so for the last time this season, I've had such a joy working on this podcast, putting numerous hours of work into the show over the past couple months. So thank you all so much for listening, all the listeners out there, Tom Sox Nation. We really appreciate it. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed every single one of these episodes that covered Tom Sox, whether it be player interviews, conversations looking around the VBL, game recaps, or whatever it may be. Thank you for listening all season. I really appreciate it, truly, and I really hope that you enjoyed all of these episodes. So without further ado, for the last time this season, go Sox.